Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me again this afternoon. My name's Ian Heffley, and I'm an admissions counselor here in Vermont for our programs in Africa, south of the Sahara, and the Middle East. And today I'm joined by Kristen Hawkreiter. Kristen, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Kristen, and I am a senior social work major at the University of Pittsburgh, and I went on the Gulu Post-Conflict Transformation Program in northern Uganda in 2013.
Thanks very much for taking some time. I know senior year can be quite busy while you're at university. So let's just jump right into it, and I'll start off with my first question here. What is or are the main reasons that you decided on your SIT program there in Gulu?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first heard about the SIT programs in the region from my global studies advisor here at the University of Pittsburgh. And she told me that several students had gone on other programs in the region and had really enjoyed them. So I started to look into the programs that I might be interested in when I wanted to study abroad. And I was really drawn to the Gulu program specifically, one, because I found out that that's one of the few programs where you can actually have an internship as well as do a research project. SIT, as you may know, is very research-based, but I also wanted to get some real hands-on working experience with a nonprofit in the area, so it was really nice that that program would allow me to do that. And I also was really drawn to the area and the region and the fact that it was so different from my home and what I was used to. When I talked to some advisors at SIT about which program would be the best for me, they told me that if I had a bit of an adventurous spirit and really enjoyed taking a few risks, that I would get a lot out of the Gulu program because it would challenge me in some ways that I might not be used to. And it absolutely was that. So that was really what drove me to this program in particular.
Thanks very much for being so succinct there. Now, my next question has to do with skills that you learned. Can you name one or two key skills that you learned at SIT Uganda based in Gulu that you believe you wouldn't have learned anywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really learned how to be cross-culturally competent and how to do research when things might not go always the way that you planned. So the first one, SIT and the staff that I worked with were really great at preparing all of the students to really immerse themselves in the culture that we were in. I had never gone out of the Western world prior to this study abroad experience, so I didn't really know what to expect, maybe how to react to my host family or the different situations I was getting into. But the program itself really allowed me to learn the tools that I would need to kind of navigate that new landscape and be culturally sensitive to the people that I was around and learn the most that I could and be as respectful as I could to those populations. And I also learned how to conduct field research. I had actually never conducted any research prior to this study abroad experience, so I wasn't exactly sure what I was getting myself into when I first joined the program, but the teachers there really were great and sat down with us, and even though I was at a very basic level, I didn't even know what a research methods section really entailed. She really went step by step and taught me how to be an effective field researcher, so which was great. I've never heard of any other program that really sat someone down and was able to take someone from barely any knowledge about research to, in the end, coming up with a project that I was really happy with in terms of my research that I conducted. So that was really another great thing. And sometimes it's hard to conduct field research in a developing country. So sometimes you have to adapt to some really changing environments or some difficult situations, and I think that our teachers definitely gave us some tools on how to deal with that as well. It wasn't just me learning research in Pittsburgh, where I'm from, but it was learning it in situations that I wasn't used to. So I think that was really valuable and unique to this program.
Wow, that definitely sounds like you had quite the experience there with the ISP section of the program.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now, I'm going to ask you to be a little picky here, and
okay.
what is your favorite aspect of SIT Gulu that you experienced with us?
Okay, that's so hard. Everyone always asks that, and it is hard to boil it down. But probably my favorite thing really would have been my host families and the people that I met there. Uh, I can't imagine my experience without the families that I stayed with because they taught me so much more, I think, than I could even learn in a classroom. Even though I learned a lot in the classroom, but they really helped me to immerse myself in the culture far more than I think I ever would have been able to if I'd been staying in a hotel or with other American students. I stayed with 3 host families over the course of my time with the program. I stayed with one family for 2 months. We also had a rural homestay where we stayed with for a week. And both of those experiences were incredibly different because the first one was a family living in a compound that she was pretty well off and coming from a really educated background. And then I went to my rural homestay and they lived in far different conditions. And many of them had survived some pretty horrific experiences in the war, and it was amazing to see how they were really trying to rebuild, even though the community they lived in was so impoverished. So it was really interesting seeing those different aspects, and I love both of them. Both of them are now my new family, and so both of them were great. And then I also stayed with a member of the organization that I interned with during my ISP period, and she was also phenomenal, and I got to learn so much about the NGO world through her eyes. So the fact that I had so many connections and opportunities to be with locals and learn from them was so valuable, and I really think that was probably the best part of my experience because I still talk to them today, and that's really where I felt like I made an impact on that community.
That's absolutely wonderful to hear. Just an interesting historical tidbit. SIT is actually credited with inventing the homestay experience because
Oh.
in 1932 we put a bunch of Americans with some Germans right before we started all our programs.
Oh, great. I had no idea about that. That's really interesting.
Amazing things come out of this tiny little state sometimes.
Yeah.
No, because we're in such a tiny little state with not much
Mhm.
population, actually, I think the entire state has twice the population of Pittsburgh. Um, now, that leads to people not really knowing who we are. So, how would
Yeah.
you explain to someone who's never heard of SIT, how would you explain it?
Yeah. Uh, I was thinking about this before because people have asked me about my SIT experience since then, especially people who don't know what SIT is, and it's very hard to explain sometimes because there's so much that I think is unique to SIT programs. Uh, but some of the main things are that it's a very academically based program and really about immersing someone in the culture that they're in. So it's very research focused because I think the idea is to really have you understand the place that you're at and not just kind of have a superficial overview, which you might get in some other programs. You're really digging into the difficult issues of the area that you're in, and also trying to experience things and learn through that. One thing that I thought was really unique was the idea of experiential learning that SIT has, and I really enjoyed that because we were thrown into a lot of situations and said, our teachers were like, figure it out. Go and you figure out how to answer some questions. And at first that was really jarring to me. I didn't really know exactly what to do or how to navigate the landscape or the people, but very quickly I realized that it was really beneficial because I learned so much more in those experiences than I would have just sitting in a classroom. So learning through those experiences and learning how to do that. So you really learn that on an SIT program. And then you get to travel to some really interesting places that are non-traditional. I think that's the other great thing about SIT. I don't know many programs that operate out of Gulu. And I really wanted to travel to a place like that when I was looking for places to study abroad. So I think that's the other important aspect as well.
I think we're the only one that operate out of Gulu
Oh, the
as an
only
academic
one.
exchange program.
Wow,
But
that's interesting.
so was that your first experience with experiential learning? Was that your first go round?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had gone through 10 years, however many years, 12, I can't count anymore, of formal education, and never had at me. And so I got very used to that was the way that learning is done. And so when I went to SIT and they started saying, you know, we're going to push you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, and we want you to come up with answers and come back to us, and then we'll discuss things and learning through your experiences. I had no idea what that really was, or what that meant. But very quickly I learned what it meant and how valuable it was. So yeah, it was absolutely the first time. And everyone on my program really enjoyed that level of freedom and all of everything that we gained from the experiential learning model. And yeah, so that was really great that we were able to take all of that away.
I'm very happy to hear that. Now, with the next question, I want to bring the experience home a little bit. Have you had the opportunity? I know you mentioned that you're a social work major there at Pitt. Have you had the opportunity to take your studies, either based on the theme or the location, back to Pittsburgh with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did some presentations and took a global social work class when I came back to try and learn some more about the region and the area. Unfortunately, there aren't too many classes specifically on Gulu, which is unfortunate. I have to push for that in the future. But I really tried to learn as much as I could once I came back because I didn't want to lose that experience and what it meant to me and stop my learning about that area even if I wasn't there anymore. But I think the biggest thing that I really took back with me and worked on was a project that I conducted with the NGO that I worked with in Gulu that I interned for. I worked with the executive director after I interned there to create a fundraising project for the youth that I worked with. Because when I was there, I learned so much from my organization, and I really wanted to be able to give back. I didn't want that to be the end of my experience, and to continue working with them when I came back to Pittsburgh. So I, over the next year, I worked with that organization to raise about $7,000. We just actually finished the campaign, which is really great, to help start micro enterprises for some of the youth that we worked with, to help them raise their communities out of poverty. And it came out of my research, actually, because I noticed that there was a need. So that was kind of combining the social work aspect of looking at a need and coming up with a solution, and then also bringing in the work that I had done with the organization in Gulu. So yeah, definitely is a continuing learning process for sure. That's hasn't stopped, and I don't think it will stop. I want to continue learning about the area. So
it is definitely an area rich in lessons and history and everything. Africa tends to grab hold of you like that.
Yeah.
I would love to read any information that you may have about what you're continuing to do in Gulu. You feel free to send it my direction.
All right, great. I will.
Yeah, we love to profile alums like yourself on our social media or our blog or our website if you're up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely send you some information. I always like to talk up Gweji. Oh, I don't think I mentioned the name. It's Gulu Women's Economic Development and Globalization. They're a wonderful organization if anyone out there is interested in looking them up. That's
Okay.
my little spiel.
That's perfect. Now, I always like to end these interviews that I have with alums, asking them, is there anything that you want to end with, whether it's just a little word of wisdom as someone who's quote unquote been there, done that, or something you would have liked to know before you departed on your study abroad program?
Okay. There there's a few things. Before I went, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I knew that the program sounded interesting, but I had never even flown on a plane by myself before. So I was coming from not very much background. And I was a little afraid. I didn't know if I was making the right decision to go to Gulu. Also, as many people who might be considering programs like this will know, your friends and family don't really understand it sometimes. I definitely got a lot of people telling me, isn't that the place where Coney is? Are you going to become a child soldier? Things like that. And I'm just like, no, like, there's so much misunderstanding out there. And a lot of people will say things and really not understand why you want to go to a place like Gulu. Which is really remote and very different from what you're used to. But I think that that's where the value comes from, is going to that place and being able to come back and teach your friends and family about the wonderful things that you learned, and that it's so much more than maybe some of the media stories that you hear. Or, and I think that that's really the value. And I think you'll learn so much more going to a place like Gulu than you could going to maybe a more mainstream westernized place. It was probably one of the best it was one of the best experiences of my life. And a lot of people will tell me that study abroad changed them, but being in Gulu and being with SIT like really touched me and changed me in so many ways and helped me just to be more confident. I went in saying, okay, I'll learn a lot, but it's not going to change my life or anything. And I came out and I was very much a different person. And it's rare that you can have experiences in your life where you can say that. And so I definitely suggest anyone who's interested in any of these programs, especially Gulu, please look into it and don't just necessarily be scared off of by what other people tell you or very blanket statements that people might have about a region that paint it as being negative. There's such a rich history and culture in these types of places that people don't know about, and you can get to experience that. And I think, that's what's really valuable. So definitely encourage people, follow your dreams, and definitely go study abroad in some non-traditional places. So, yeah.
And you sound like a wonderful spokeswoman for
I
the
know,
program.
I do. I always come off that way, but oh well. I enjoyed the program.
No, there's nothing to apologize for. It's wonderful to hear that you had such a wonderful,
Yeah.
transformative experience there, and I really thank you for taking time with me this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And make sure you continue all the good work that you're doing with Gwedgie and finish out your senior year up on top.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Have a good day.
You too.